I would like to call the meeting of the City of Wildwood's Board of Adjustment to order. The board members present today are Bob Morris, board member, Jared Frank, board member, Deborah Coleman, board member, Arnie Sprunger, board member, and myself, Mary Giles, as acting chair this evening. The Department of Planning staff present is Joe Vunich, Director of Planning, and Terry Gaston, Senior Planner. City Attorney John Young and Court Reporter Courtney Tallman are also present. First, I offer into the record the affidavit of publication pertaining to today's meeting, August 15th, 2019, and take official notice of the zoning ordinance of the City of Wildwood, including Ordinance 28, authorizing and establishing the Board of Adjustment's powers and duties. Now let me explain the hearing procedure. Please be aware the information I'm about to describe is also provided on the Board of Adjustment public hearing procedure handout, which is available on the table in the back of the chambers. This is an informal type of hearing. However, the meeting's proceeding will be recorded by a reporter for future transcription if needed. The petitions are called in the order listed on the agenda. As the petition is called, I will ask a Department of Planning staff member to read each request into the record. Then the petitioner or their representative will come forward, state their name and address, be sworn in by the court reporter, and make a brief presentation to the board explaining the nature of the requested variance and the hardship necessitating it. The board will only consider the nature and condition of the property and whether these factors mandate a variance in order to allow for its full utilization. Board members may ask questions to clarify the facts of the petitioner's presentation. When the board is satisfied with the material presented by the petitioner, the chair will then ask if there is anyone present in the audience who would like to speak in favor or in opposition to the request. Each speaker will be asked to come forward, provide their name and address, be sworn in, and then state their comments. Please remember, speakers should only address the board at all times. No discussion between parties is permitted, and please keep discussion among the audience to a minimum. Procedurally, the petitioner may request a continuance at any time during the hearing, prior to a call for the vote, in order to bring in additional documentation or information. The board may also request a continuance to gather additional information or for a further visit to the site. After the conclusion of input from all interested parties, the board may call a staff person forward to provide the Department of Planning's report on this matter if requested by any member of the board, the petitioner, or any individual in attendance. Additionally, any other information not presented in the previous testimony but pertinent to the request will be noted at this time. Once all speakers have been heard, the chair will call for a motion to grant or deny with or without conditions, then the board will vote. At that time, the discussion relating to the petition is concluded and no further input will be permitted. The board will generally make a decision today. 4 members of the board must vote in favor of the petition for it to be approved. If a variance is approved, the petitioner has 6 months to obtain the necessary permits or establish the use, or it will expire. If the board's decision is unfavorable, the petitioner has the right of appeal to the St. Louis County Circuit Court. This appeal must be done within 30 days of the decision. Are there any questions at this time? Hearing no questions at this time, the board will proceed. May the first request be read into the record, which will be followed by initial comments by the Department of Planning and a brief slide presentation.
Thank you, Chair Giles. Board Adjustment 1419 covered for Sarah Home, PO Box 280, Wildwood, Missouri 63040. Sarah Mary K. Corsair 17617 Melrose Road, Wildwood, Missouri 6303. Request exception to the failure and the general development conditions in particular, for the purpose of extending the deadline to the commencement of substantial construction at 16805 Manchester. Locator number 24B6028 would thereby authorize the deadline for substantial construction to begin project no later than 2020 in lieu of the previous deadline of January 17th. This request is contrary to the requirements of 14.190 C8 regulation, City of Wildwood zoning ordinance, and C8 Plain Commercial District ordinance, which was approved by the City of Wildwood in 2013 and governs planning and zoning commission. They recommended the extension on February Board of Adjustment 719 was postponed at the April 18th meeting, heard and then denied at the May 2019. Thank you.
Mr. Vunich?
Madam Chair, thank you. Madam Chair and members of the board, before the department introduces several items into the record regarding this request, we would like to welcome Mr. Sprunger to the Board of Adjustment. It's his first meeting tonight, and we appreciate your service. As I tell most of our volunteers, we can't do it without you, so thank you. Mr. Young, if you'd like to introduce the gentleman next to you, then we'll know who's all here.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. With me this evening is Sam Beffa, who recently started working at our office and is here just to learn how the sausage is made, so to speak.
Madam Chair, as part of this request, the Department of Planning would like to introduce into the record the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood's Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Zoning Ordinance. The file that has been created, developed, and maintained by the Department of Planning relative to this request, and all contents contained therein, which includes the Department of Planning's recommendation report. And then finally, any other testimony, exhibits, or items provided as part of tonight's public hearing. Madam Chair, with your permission, Ms. Gaston has a slide presentation of this particular site.
Please.
Good evening, board members. The first case is located at 16815 Manchester Road. It is a Covert Corsair development that was approved back in 2013. It is located approximately 3 minutes from City Hall, where we reside right now, down Taylor Road, west of Taylor Road, north of Manchester. This next slide depicts an aerial photo of the property. As you can see, about 2/3 of the from more than the half. Oh, good grief! It's wooded. With the 1/3 of the property to the south as being manicured lawn for the most part. It's maintained with brush hog. This picture depicts the ephemeral drainage way that runs from the west to the east towards Taylor Road. And this next slide is the contours showing the elevation of the property. It's high at Manchester Road, dips down towards the ephemeral drainage way, and then back up again at its northern extent. Excuse me, Director, can you go back one, please? Maybe another one. One more. The blue outlined square to the north of the property is a detention basin behind the theater. The theater is just beyond that, and then City Hall is to the west. Give you an approximate position of the property and what is surrounding it. Thank you. These are pictures of the site itself. This is standing on Manchester Road, facing north. Beyond that tree line would be the movie theater and City Hall. And this is looking to the northeast. That is New Community Church. And to the right of the slide, which you will hear a request this evening about it as well. Again, just to give you another landmark on the positioning of these sites. This is looking, which way is this looking? This is looking due east on Manchester Road towards Taylor Roundabout. This is south with the subject property behind me, the foreground being Manchester Road. And this property being another site that was owned by the petitioner. And then to the left of the slide is North Real Estate Agency. This is looking due west. A fine establishment of Wildwood is Larry's Tavern in the background there. And this is looking at the property again in a northwest direction. Again, the property was approved in 2013 for a development. It's 11.5 acres in size. As you can see, with the existing roads and potential extension of Main Street via Crestview out to 109, this is one of the largest parcels in the area that will actually provide relief of traffic from Taylor Road by extending Wildwood Avenue. And the next slide will show the development as Ms. Corsair had planned. However, this is just serving as a roadmap, as the director will explain in greater detail, to provide that traffic congestion relief with the Wildwood Avenue roadway being punched through this site. And we did not receive any current requests in opposition or denial, so there's nothing to show you on that. And the Board of Adjustment did grant previous extensions similar to the current request, yet with the very last one being denied. Any questions? Thank you.
Could the petitioner please come forward and state your name, address, relation to the property, and be sworn in by the court reporter?
My name is Mary Kay Corsair. My address is 17617 Melrose Road, Wildwood, Missouri, 63038. Do you solemnly swear that this is I do.
Ms. Corsair, can you please explain the nature of your request and the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance?
Yes, good evening. As stated, my name is Mary Kay Corsair. I am a long-term resident of the city of Wildwood. Excuse me, I live at 17617 Melrose Road. I am here this evening to ask your cooperation and help in extending the zoning on 16815 Manchester Road, which is an 11-acre piece of ground in the city, which we had zoned for 168 apartments and two 10,000-square-foot commercial buildings. We had this property zoned so that it would be more attractive to potential developers due to the time it would save in various approvals with the city, sewer district, etc. During the time we have had this property zoned, we did experience a severe recessionary downturn in the economy. We still believe this is a viable project, but it is critical to keep this zoning in force so that the developers will consider our city and this project. I would like you to know that my partner Bob Covert and myself have always cooperated with the city of Wildwood on many various requests it has made of us. Most recently, last year, the city asked us for 3 easements on 3 different properties in order to facilitate the streetscape project on the center portion of Manchester Road. We granted these 3 easements and did not charge any fee to the city. We recognized that the project was valuable and needed to move forward. We did this in the spirit of cooperation. In trying to find a buyer for this property, it is extremely important that this zoning is in effect. We do have a Corps of Engineers permit on this property. On February 4, 2019, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously to extend this zoning for 18 months. The Director of Planning, City of Wildwood, Joe Vunich, is in support of extending this zoning for 18 months. If we are able to maintain our zoning on this property and the property develops, the city will gain a valuable north-south road through the property, which will greatly benefit residents. We therefore ask your cooperation in extending this zoning for 18 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corsair. Do any board members have any questions for the petitioner?
Yeah, I think I do. So the property is yours.
Yes.
You're wanting to find a developer. to
Yes.
purchase it and go forward with the project.
Yes.
And so, just to make sure I understand, sorry, for you to get that developer to come in and actually do the project, you need to have this zoning the way it is, so that the developer has the assurance to actually do the project. Is that kind of the
That is correct, but a big thing is it would save time for a developer. Usually developers, when they're looking for something, they're anxious to get going on it. And they realize, there's a lot of time going through zoning processes with cities. And the fact that we have this done and, more or less ready to go, there's still a lot of things the developer would have to come back through the city for. But this would save a lot of time and therefore make it more attractive to hopefully sell to the developer.
So maybe one last question. Maybe this is, I'm not sure if I should ask you or anyone else, but if this doesn't get approved, then does the zoning go away, or?
Mr. Sprunger, if the variance is not granted, the commencement of construction timeline will be then in default. With that default, the department is required under the zoning ordinance to proceed forward and revoke the zoning on the property for failure to complete. And then with the revocation of the zoning, any new developer would have to basically start at square one.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like you had some interest in early 2017. It says roughly what's changed since then? Any interest?
That's a difficult one to answer. We have had off and on interest, but I have nothing concrete tonight as I stand here.
Any other questions?
Maybe one last one, I'm sorry. So if we grant the extension for 18 months, and 18 months slips by, and it still doesn't quite work out, you don't have a developer, will you be back again for another? I mean, is this just going to kind of go on?
I mean, it's always hard to predict the future,
Sure.
and I guess that would be my answer. It's hard to predict the future.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board members? Thank you, Ms. Corsair.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to open the podium to speakers in the audience who may want to speak in favor or opposition to the request. Seeing none, I'd like to offer the opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report. Do any members of the board want an oral presentation of the report? Any members of the audience? Hearing none, I'll offer the Department of Planning the opportunity to make any final comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the board, the Department of Planning has provided for your consideration tonight its recommendation report relative to this particular request. In that recommendation report, the department does support granting the variance to extend the timeframe for commencement of construction to approximately July 2020. As part of the findings of fact, the department does identify the practical difficulty of the situation that if the variance is not granted, the zoning would then become in question, and the department would be required under the zoning ordinance to proceed forward with the revocation of the zoning which would then mean any future development interest in the property would have to begin at square one. The department believes the request is reasonable and has stated this in previous presentations to the Board of Adjustment due to the fact that with the zoning in place, it provides an excellent roadmap to any future development interest in terms of expectation, what could happen on the property, but more importantly, what would be expected of any developer from the City of Wildwood, the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District, the Corps of Engineers, etc. The department also notes that over the course of time, which has been substantial in this case, and the petitioner referenced in her presentation, the recession and the impact that had on development across not only Wildwood, the St. Louis region, but the United States, that no new regulations have been promulgated by the city that would cause this project to change dramatically. It complies with our public space requirements. It meets the standards of the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District relative to Phase 2 stormwater regulations of the Clean Water Act. It meets the architectural and neighborhood design standards of the city via its town center plan. So causing the project to restart does not necessarily allow us to add things that weren't part of the current approved zoning. And then finally, the approved zoning established is a very high standard in terms of development requirements. That's part and parcel of being in town center. And so as you can see, there are multiple buildings. Those multiple buildings are required to be adequately parked, and the future residents of those buildings must have public space and access, etc. So from the department's perspective, when it reviews the request premised on the existing site-specific ordinance and approved site development plan, it still sees a project that is very viable and, if not granted the variance, a project that, for all intents and purposes, couldn't necessarily be recreated in its current form. Madam Chair and members of the board, the department would be glad to respond to any questions regarding its report and recommendation at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Venus. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you again.
Does anyone on the board have any final comments? At this time, oh, sorry.
Actually, I guess it's a, I mean, that seems very, very rational, what you described. I guess what always makes me a little cautious is why are we even talking about it? I mean, it was not accepted or whatever by the city council, right?
Yes, the Planning and Zoning Commission endorsed the extension of time, and it had at times endorsed and not endorsed the extension of time. So there's been no pattern, if you were to ask me to say what causes one to say yes and the next time to say no. And the same is true with City Council. They've said yes, they've said no. I think the overarching reason for the denials has always been you've had approximately 10 plus years to make this work and nothing's come to fruition. Why should the city continue to support it? And the department has always been able to respond to that question, not necessarily successfully, but has had always its rationales prepared. Being logical does not necessarily mean the variance should be approved. The chair, Ms. Giles, mentioned that there has to be a practical difficulty or a unique hardship relating to the application of the regulations to the property itself. In terms of some of the department's rationales, certainly those don't necessarily address practical difficulty or unique hardship, but I do believe that from the perspective of the department, not having the extension approved and the variance granted by the board, practical difficulty is real. the zoning's lost for all intents and purposes. And from a future development standpoint, we've added another 12 to 18 months to the process.
So is there any downside that you can think of, Joe?
In the strict interpretation of the law, I don't know if an attorney or a judge would say the practical difficulty meets the high standard of granting a variance. So there's always that component, which the department recognizes and certainly takes into consideration. And then on the flip side, you'd be doing something contrary to the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. You're welcome.
Mr. Vunich, is it possible that the council wants this to go back to zoning and planning for a specific reason? Like maybe they feel it would be too crowded in that small parcel of land, too dense? Is that a possibility?
Certain city council members had mentioned the density of this particular project as part of its rationale, that they would like to review it, given that it's been that span of time I've mentioned. Others have expressed concerns that given the public hearing was so long ago, and that we've added residents in the vicinity, and existing residences have been sold and reoccupied by new people, that there'd be a benefit to going back to public hearing just for the information and notification and understanding people would gain through that process. So there's been a range of reasons. Certainly, I wouldn't argue with the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council on them. I think there's reasons in support of allowing the extension, at least in this case, one more time.
I have a question, Director Vunich.
Yes, ma'am.
This same request was denied at the May meeting. Isn't the remedy to appeal it? I mean, how is it in front of us again and 2 months later?
Certainly.
3 months later, 4 months later?
Certainly. You are absolutely correct, Madam Chair. A immediate remedy, which has to be filed within 30 days of the board's decision, is an application to the St. Louis County Circuit Court. But there is nothing in our regulations that says an individual can't keep coming back to the board each month or every other month or every quarter. The hope is that if someone does repeat the process, there's new information that wasn't provided in the previous hearing, or circumstances have changed in that they discovered something that would better define a unique hardship or practical difficulty. So we can't necessarily preclude somebody from returning. As you know, we had a gentleman that wanted an overhang on his front porch, I think, that came 3 straight months. And ultimately the decision remained unchanged. But I think the strength of Wildwood is we'll always listen. It may not in the end change the decision, but we'll always listen.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Any other questions or comments? At this time, I'd like to close the proceeding and call for a vote. Can I get a motion to approve, to deny, or to approve the request with conditions?
I'll make a motion, we approve it.
We've received a motion to approve. Can I ask for a second?
Second that, please.
I'd like to this time call for a vote. Board Member Morris.
Yes.
Board Member Frank.
Approve.
Board Member Coleman.
No.
Board Member Sprunger.
Approve.
And I'm, as acting chair, vote no.
Members of the board, just for the purposes of the record, it requires 4 votes for approval. The request is denied.
Ms. Gaston, can we have the next request read into the record, please?
Court Adjustment 1519, Ryan Head, and Bradley, tenant at 16497 Clayton Road, Wildwood, Missouri, Boulevard, St. Louis, Missouri, 63130, owner of Winding Trail Center. Care of Detective Johnson, Landmark Sign Company, 175 Chesterfield, 63005. Requesting exception to supplementary regulation, section 8.8, relating to business signs attached to the wall, for the purpose of illuminating two authorized wall signs at 167 Clayton Road, St. Louis County, locator number 2110327, Lot 5, the resubdivision, Lot 1, boundary adjustment, Lots 1 and 2 of Mallard Park, which would thereby allow the exception of the lighting source to be internal versus external. This request contradicts the requirements of Chapter 415.420 sign regulations of City of Washington zoning ordinance and CA blank ordinance 977, which was approved by the City Council in 2003. This is located in.
Thank you, Ms. Gaston. Director Vunich?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the board, before this particular matter is taken up for discussion, the Department of Planning would like to introduce into the record regarding the request the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Zoning Ordinance. The file that has been created, developed, and maintained by the Department of Planning regarding this request, and all contents contained therein, which includes the Department of Planning's recommendation report, and then finally any other items that are offered as part of tonight's hearing, which would include exhibits, maps, and other items. Madam Chair, Ms. Gaston has a slide presentation relative to this site if you all would like to see it at this time.
Yes, please.
Board of Adjustment 1519 is located at 16497 Clayton Road. It is the tenant known as Against Gravity in this multi-tenant building. It is located approximately 12 minutes from City Hall to the northeast, out 100 north on Strucker Road at its intersection with Clayton. Here's a picture depicting these are non-conforming commercial uses that the zoning was in place by St. Louis County. You have the subject site in blue, which again is Winding Trail Center. You have Zix Great Outdoors, which is a plant nursery to the south of it. There is a medical building to the north of the subject site, and the Elegant Child early childhood nursery school. The property again is located in this fairly prominent intersection at Strucker and Clayton Road, and this just kind of zooms in a little bit tighter so you can see the parking field. The tenant space is to the west side of the building, where the kind of the turret, if you will, it projects out from the building. And this shows the topography of the site, and it slopes from its northeast corner to the intersection at Strucker and Clayton. This is looking north, standing on Clayton Road, at the intersection, facing north on Clayton Road with Strucker to the left and right of the slide. Winding Trail Center, and you can sort of see the little turret there to the right of the slide, and Elegant Child campus over to the left. And just panning around, this is looking due east. Again, the subject site to the left of the slide, and there's a cell tower beyond it to the east, Zix Great Outdoors to the right of the slide. This is looking in a southwesterly direction. Strucker Road is to the left of the slide, and Clayton winds around the church property. This is looking in a west-northwest location with the school right there at the corner. The speed limit at this intersection is 35 miles per hour. It's lighted. It's pretty much a destination point. So, and like I said, it's kind of a non-conforming zoning uses, which are all fairly similar if they're not, of a commercial aspect, they're institutional, or in Zick's case, non-urban with the CUP. This is the subject building again. Beyond that tree, you can sort of see the tenant. And it fronts all the way on its frontage with Clayton Road, a portion of it on Clayton Road, but the majority of it runs north up Strucker Road. Because of the double frontage at this corner, they are allowed 2 wall signs, as they are already existing. The question this evening is the type of lighting allowed. And there's kind of a zoom in. You can see one of the 2 signs. And this is the other one facing west. A little closer up. That's both of the signs. And this is a depiction of the sign as it would be lit. This is sign 1, the westernmost, and then this is the south sign, sign 2. The red circle indicates the previous variance that was granted at this subject site for the Remax Gold West real estate office for internal lighting, similar to the request before you this evening. And, could you run back to one of the aerial photos, please? One of the larger ones, if you would. Okay. There were 2 letters that were provided as part of your report packet. One was to the south of Strucker Road. It's off the site of this location. Oh, you could go to the road map, Joe. Excuse me. So it would be Big Horton Basin, just over on Strucker Road, to the south a little. And then the other one is north off the picture here in Windcrest. So it would be to the northeast at a higher elevation. And if you could see all of the tree canopy, you would see it's completely screened. And the subject parcel is at a much lower elevation than it. That was a good one. Yeah. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, so in that little cluster of businesses, Remax and Gold West, do you have internal lighting?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I understood.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Good question. Anyone else?
Thank you. No? Good?
No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gaston. Could the petitioner please come forward and state your name, address, and relation to the property, and then be sworn in by the court reporter?
Jim Lasardi with Landmark Sign Company, 175 Chesterfield Industrial Boulevard in Chesterfield, Missouri. I sure do.
Can you please explain the nature of the request and the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance?
Basically, he's trying to match up with what everybody else in the complex is trying to do. Everybody else has pretty much internal lighting and had become, in front of the board as well. Just trying to promote his business, pretty much.
Does anybody on the board have any questions?
Are you open to external lighting?
Problem is no way to technically, he would really have to, that'd be a really hard thing to do, especially with the canopy, the way it's set up and kind of the lighting that's there. It would be kind of hard to do. The internal lighting would be the most economical way to do it and also match up with everything else that's going on with the complex.
I'm just curious if you consider that or if it was even an option.
Well, as you can tell, kind of just the whole grandeur of the canopy and everything else, it would probably, I think it would look worse than it would with anything else. So.
What color? White.
It's gonna be white.
Change, blank.
Nope.
This might be a question for Director Vunich or Ms. Gaston. Is that like a single space, or I remember the Remax was 2 spaces and that went into the decision making for the 2 signs. Is this just 1 space with asking for 2 signs, or does it take up as much room as the size of the space? Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
We know what that, these became Marie's experience. We know what they did. They had 2 signs up.
Yes, they had 2 signs as well. They were internally illuminated.
So they're entitled to have signs, right? Right. I mean,
Yes, sir.
I got that right. Okay. So I was reading through some of the concerns from the people around. The amount of light that would be emitted from an external light, would it be more or less about the same as
It would probably be more. This is LED lighting, which is very minute, and if you can see the lettering behind it, very small lettering. And an external light would glow the whole sign. So you would have a lot more lighting with an external light. I mean, you'd probably want to do it from both sides. Now you got 2 lights as opposed to just the individual smaller LED light.
Do any other board members have any questions for the petitioner?
do these lights stay on all night long?
No, not in most cases. Anyway, during the day you wouldn't be able to see them anyway. So it's just behind the lettering. You wouldn't be noticeable even if they were on all night. Normally we would put a photo cell or something of that nature behind it.
Do any other board members have any questions? Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open the floor to speakers in the audience who may want to speak in favor or in opposition to the request. Hearing none, at this time, I'd like to offer the opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report. Hearing no request for that, Ms. Director Vunich, do you have any final comments?
Yes, ma'am, and thank you. Madam Chair and members of the board, the Department of Planning again has provided a recommendation report for your consideration regarding this matter. In that recommendation report, the department does support allowing internal illumination of the 2 authorized signs. Principally, the petitioner's representative identified the primary reason for that support. The architectural treatments of this particular building would not allow the typical gooseneck type, which for all intents and purposes points the light source more targetedly toward the signs. As you can see, there's a flat roof, or the canopy is flat above the signs. The department would note that the underlying sign regulations that requires the internal illumination have, for the most part, not been supported at this location. And the reason why is the governing ordinance that established the requirements also applies to 8 other properties in the vicinity of this intersection. St. Louis County, prior to the incorporation of Wildwood, authorized a long list of intense uses at this intersection and a few other properties on Clayton Road. In 1997, the city of Wildwood took the initiative and downzoned the properties, which was controversial and certainly not necessarily supported by many of the landowners of the properties. So the one-size-fits-all maybe works for some of the properties, but not necessarily this property, given that the architectural requirements were substantial as part of the review by the city's architectural review board. And those architectural requirements creates the practical difficulty in this particular instance. So again, from the department's perspective, it believes the request is reasonable. The department would be glad at this time to answer any questions regarding its report and recommendation, and thank you.
Do any board members have any questions for Director Vunich?
Thank you.
At this time, I would like to close the proceedings and ask for a vote. Do we have a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Board Member Sprunger has made a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Board Member Coleman has seconded it. Can I get I'm going to take a roll call. Board Member Morris.
Yes.
Board Member Frank.
Yes.
Board Member Coleman.
Yes.
Board Member Sprunger.
Yes.
And myself as acting chair votes yes. Your variance has been granted. Thank you. Senior Planner Gaston, at this time, could you read the next request into the record?
Board adjustment 1619, New Community Church, 6801, Baldwin, Missouri, 630. Sarah Jeremiah Herbert, 2634, Highway 1, Baldwin, Missouri, 40. Request an extension to the city sign regulations for the purpose of erecting certain permanent signs locator number 24B630297, and thereby authorize the monument title information to be at a size of 55.67 square feet in lieu of the 30-foot square foot requirement. This request is contrary to the requirement set forth in the City of Wildwood zoning, Chapter 14.420, sign regulations for C and N district, in Chapter 415.190, C8 plain commercial district, in St. Louis County, C8 plain commercial district, 15570. Property is located in Warren.
Thank you. Director Vunich?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the board, before beginning the hearing on this particular item, the Department of Planning would like to introduce into the record regarding the same the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Zoning Ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained by the Department of Planning regarding this particular request, and all contents contained therein, which does include the department's recommendation report, and then finally any other items provided as part of tonight's hearing on this matter, which would include the testimony, exhibits, or maps, or any other submitted items for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Vunich.
Madam Chair, Ms. Gaston has another slide presentation she'd like to provide at this time, with your permission.
Yes, please.
So this property is located at 16801 Manchester Road. It is directly adjacent to the other variance request you heard earlier this evening. Again, it's approximately 3 minutes from Wildwood City Hall to the west side of Taylor Road, north of Manchester Road. Here's an aerial photo depicting the property. Again, the very north segment of it is wooded. The building and some accessory structures sit to the left central area of it, and the remainder of the property is parking. Parking is based on the seating requirements of this institutional use. This is a close-up of the property where you can see the improvements just a little bit better, and obviously the tree line extends on either side. This shows the topography of the site, and it falls from its northeast corner to, excuse me, I'm switching those numbers around. It falls from Manchester Road, dips down, and then rises again towards the north. Here's a picture of the improvements standing on Manchester Road, looking north. Beyond the tree line is the movie theater and City Hall adjacent to it. Again, the tree line here is pretty much the northern extent of this property, where the previous petition that you heard, Covert Corsair, that would sit between the church and the movie theater. This is looking due east on Manchester Road towards the roundabout at Taylor, and you can see the existing signage in the center of the slide. This is looking south towards residential and beyond the commercial use, which is the North Real Estate Agency. This is looking west. Again, Covert Corsair property would be between this church site and where Larry's Tavern is located. The yellow arrow pointing to the pink circle basically indicates the proposed location of the 55 plus square foot sign that the petitioner is requesting. In relation to the overall property, it's very tiny, so it's sort of hard to depict it here. So you can see you can go. Here is the rendering, or excuse me, these are the elevations of the signage and what it would look like as compared to the existing sign. And you'll see another slide about that here in a second. This is a cross-section of the sign. This is the rendering of it in relation to its size to average human. And then again, for comparison's sake, the sign that sits, the posting sign that sits in front of the new community church in the lower right picture, lower left picture, is approximately the size of this podium, to give you an idea of size. And it matches the 30 square foot requirement. The site was previously granted a variance for accessory structures that sit behind the building. Those accessory structures were to be temporary originally, and the board approved them to be permanent. And we've not received any requests, comment forms from the website in relation to opposition or support of this.
Any questions?
Any questions for me at this time?
So the current, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you want me to go first? Sure. Oh, I was just gonna ask, is the sign gonna go perpendicular to the road as the old sign, or is it going to be parallel?
That is correct. It's perpendicular to the road, so you can see it if you're traveling eastbound or westbound on Manchester Road. I'll defer to the petitioner as far as presenting their rationales, but per the application that was submitted, the biggest concern is visibility due to the new Manchester Road streetscape being built that's going to have parallel parking between it and on the street, and then a green strip where the sign would go, and then beyond that would be a parking field. So you have a lot of cars in the area.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead.
And did you say that the current sign is? 30?
It does meet the 30 square foot requirement for the underlying zoning.
Does the Does that existing sign have to be taken down with the
Yes.
improvement? It has to be taken down.
Yeah, it's being removed due to the City of Wildwood's Manchester Road streetscape project. And because the existing sign is compliant, but because of our project, they actually have to take it down, go through the, permitting process of everything. But the city is actually replacing the sign for them at our cost because it's associated with our project.
The way it is now, size-wise, that's what the city's going to replace.
Well, we're
we want a
replacing their
variance.
sign, whatever is approved.
Right, yeah. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Good questions.
Thank you,
Okay, thank
Senior
you.
Benegasson. At this time, can the petitioner please come forward, state your name, address in relation to the property, and then be sworn in by the court reporter?
Hello, good evening. My name is Michael Schaefer. I'm with Vessel Architecture. We were hired to design the sign. My address is 3417 East Greensmith Street, St. Charles, Missouri, 63301, if that matters. I have a flash drive that's got some additional slides to show. I do so affirm.
Mr. Schaefer, can you please explain the nature of your request and the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance?
Sure. So if we could go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is the location of the project. The streetscape project will, as mentioned, remove the existing sign, and the city has offered to replace the sign. As stated earlier, there will be parking. So if we go to the next slide, the new parking will be along the road in front, and then there will be a sidewalk also, which pushes it back a little further. That doesn't have a great deal of effect. We would like to locate the sign reasonably in the middle between the entrances so that it's visible from upon approach. Can we go to the next slide? So in order to know what will be able to be seen from any given point, you start with the location of a driver's eye as they pass by. A normal height to use is 3.5 feet. And just to illustrate why that's so low, I put a section of a car just to kind of see. It feels low, but if you can kind of imagine standing next to somebody in a car, you can see how it does get that low. And then there's some other vehicle heights for comparison. We go to the next slide. So if you take a look at this section in the middle, this came from the engineer for the streetscape project. This is cut approximately in the middle at the location of the sign. I've got labeled the location of the driver's eye at approximate height when driving by in a car. And then this is the approximate size of a vehicle parked in the parking area. So you can see that even with the sign that we are proposing, and that's what I have approximately again illustrated on the side, you can see that it does grade away in that location. The height can adjust for that some, but you can see that a parked car will still block visibility for most of that sign. And if you can imagine that original sign, it's completely obscured or very nearly. Can we go to the next slide? So this is a view, again, at that east entrance as you pass. Like it's kind of right at the east entrance and looking at the sign. And so, again, you can kind of imagine, and just to kind of create some texture and kind of help visualize it, I put a couple of pictures of vehicles parked on the side of the road, and you kind of imagine how much you can see. And yeah, we can. There's 3, so we can just go ahead and kind of cycle through those. And then, and that's really all that I had. So if anybody has any questions.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Schaefer?
I'm just wondering how many people do not know that church is there, your congregation and stuff like that. I mean, it's not that I want to say you're not open for business like a restaurant, that you're shopping for, as me, shopping for a church to go to. I mean, I just don't understand why you need that big of a sign
Well,
to catch the eye of somebody that's just coming down Manchester Road. I don't.
well, I guess what I would say is that we do host a lot of events. We have weddings. We have youth that come and they'll visit. Friends will visit that have never been. There are a number of events that take place where people are not necessarily familiar with the building.
Okay, I understand. Thanks.
Now, have you considered a sign that's maybe not, from your presentation, if the issue is that they just can't see it because cars are obstructing view, it seems like you have to get the sign up in the air.
It would be possible to sort of condense the signage to 30 feet and raise it up. I think we're allowed 10 feet without any further action, 10 feet based on the grade of the road. It didn't seem like that was really an attractive option. So it was just sort of it was originally, it was designed based on what we thought it kind of needed, and then we wanted to bring it to you, and it would be possible to just raise the signage up to the top and have like a rectangle of 30 square feet kind of up on a podium of some kind. I don't think we feel like that's as attractive an option for the road or for the church.
But it's an option. I mean,
It would be possible.
Aesthetics are kind of a subjective thing. I understand that. I mean, I get that. I'm just trying to think if there's a way to be in compliance with the request still 412. Sure.
Right.
Because it seems like, why not 75 square feet? Why not? I mean, you picked a number for some reason, and it sounds like it doesn't even quite work for you because you still can't see the sign.
Yeah, it would give you enough to see the logo, and you'd still kind of be able. I mean, it would give you, I guess, a chance to. I mean, you would see that there's a sign there.
Do any other board members have any questions for Mr. Schaefer? Thank you, Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to open the floor to any speakers in the audience who may want to speak in favor or in opposition to the request. Hearing none, I'm going to offer the opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report to anybody who would like it. Hearing none, Director Vunich, do you have any final comments?
Yes, ma'am, and thank you. Madam Chair and members of the board, the Department of Planning is recommending a favorable review of the variance request submitted by New Community Church. However, that favorable recommendation would limit the sign to no greater than 50 square feet, and its ultimate size and height would be premised on the built condition being in place before authorized. The rationale behind the recommendation is the fact that as the streetscape project is completed, there will be a higher degree of separation between the drive lane and the ultimate sign than the current condition. The change necessitates, in the department's opinion, a greater size sign than authorized by the site-specific ordinance. In this case, the site-specific ordinance is more restrictive than the underlying sign regulations, in that any other institutional use, even in town center, would be allowed up to 50 square feet. The department believes an increase in the sign size is appropriate, and that, again, it be based upon the built condition, not necessarily assuming we know what the built condition is going to entail. So the recommendation is for up to 50 square feet, but the size would ultimately be authorized once the improvements are in place and a true test can be done to determine what height and what size would be best to maximize the visibility of the sign, given the circumstances associated with the request, i.e., the City of Wildwood removing their current sign and pushing the sign further away from the roadway surface itself. Madam Chair and members of the board, the department is available to answer any questions regarding its recommendation. And as always, thank you.
And I don't know quite if it's okay to even ask this, but did you talk with the petitioner and see if a 50 square foot sign as kind of a compromise would work for them?
Typically, the department doesn't necessarily negotiate. It premises its recommendation on what the underlying zoning ordinance sign regulations require, what the site-specific ordinance requires. And in this instance, what it sees on the plan sheet is very similar to what the petitioner and the architectural firm see. A pretty major change in visibility between existing and proposed. And so 50 square feet is 5 square feet less than the requested amount, and it still believes that it would be effective if appropriately designed, which I believe vessel architects can do, and it's consistent with other institutional uses, places of worship. But thank you for the question.
Do any board members have any other final comments?
It looked like in one of the renderings that you went through the slides, there was going to be some planting to the east and west of those entrances. Is that the case part of the initiative?
Yes, the streetscape will include street trees. A little different in this instance. The more formal streetscape, as we've done in the first 2 phases of Manchester Road, that being the street grates and then the street tree planted in the center of the grate. In this instance, with the new stormwater regulations, we're going to more of a tree lawn. And so there'll be street trees, but they won't be captured in a sidewalk, so to speak, in a grate. And so there will be growth of vegetation in the vicinity. Obviously, that's part of the city's responsibility to all of the businesses and churches, institutional uses, is to make sure that we don't plant our trees where the signs are going, so we block the sign and negate the effort on the part of the business or institutional use.
Ultimately, we'll be planting off in that area. Right now, it's kind of on an island.
Yes, yes. And as I say, I can certainly email to all of you the landscape plan for this section, depending on if you vote or don't vote and the outcome of a vote, so to speak. But there is plans for street trees. And a lot of those tree lawn areas, just as a sidebar, are intended to also be used for water quality treatment of stormwater runoff. So there's going to be all the native plantings and those required plantings from this Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. I actually think Phase 3 is going to be the prettiest of 3. We learn as we go.
Any other questions?
Joe, on your recommendation is a no for the 55, the request is 55.
That's correct.
But your change is a yes vote up to the 50-foot one.
Up to 50, based again
You would
upon
be approving on that.
the board granting the authority to basically determine its ultimate size, up to 50 feet, once the streetscape is in place, and we can ensure that we get the right height and the right size.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Director Vunich?
Thank you.
Sure. The petitioner, please come back up. Mr. Schaefer.
Yes. What do you think of the 50?
I think it would be a reasonable compromise. I think we could keep the spirit of what we're doing, and I think we could make that work.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Thank you, Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions at this time, I'd like to close the proceeding for a vote. Can I get a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions? Which conditions? We have, per the director's, okay. We have a motion to approve with the condition that the sign is at a size no greater than 50 square feet. Do we have a second?
She'll second, or you can second.
Second? Who's seconding it?
I guess he is.
All right,
We're gonna have a turn.
All right. All right, this time I'm going to call for a vote. Board Member Morris, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Frank?
Yes.
Board Member Coleman?
Yes.
Board Member Sprunger?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. The variance is approved, but with the condition that it is at a size no greater than 50 square feet. Thank you. All right. Senior Planner Gaston, can you read the next request into the record?
Board Adjustment 1719, Ida Ramian, Brooke, Greater Louis, 131 Barton Green Boulevard, Ellisville, Missouri, 63021. Kara Mike Busher, MB Engineering, Inc., 14851 Remington Road, Marion, Illinois, 62959. Requesting exception to minimum park requirements general for the purpose of constructing a place of worship with associated parking area at 1431 State Route 109, locator number 227640123, which would thereby authorize front yard setback distance 25 in lieu of the required 50-foot standard from both Old Editor and State Route 109. This request is contrary to requirements of Chapter 15.090 and U non-urban residence district regulations of the properties located in 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Vunich?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the board, before beginning the hearing process on this particular request, the Department of Planning would like to enter into the record the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, its zoning ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained by the Department of Planning regarding this particular request and all contents contained therein, including the department's recommendation report, and then finally any other items offered as part of tonight's hearing, which would include the testimony, exhibits, photographs, etc. Madam Chair, with your permission, Ms. Gaston has the final slide presentation of the night that is ready to be presented.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, our last case this evening is Board of Adjustment 1719. It's located at 1431 Missouri State Route 109. It is located approximately 7 minutes from City Hall. It is west of here on 100 and north on 109, and it's prominent intersection with Babbler Park Drive, M109, and Smith School Road. Oh, actually, it's not Smith School Road. It's Old Etherton, excuse me. As you can see here, the property is outlined in blue. To the east, we have the Ameren UE transmission substation, which carries electricity across the major easement area that basically bisects the city and from northwest to southeast diagonal direction. You can kind of see those lines that run through this property toward right there. Again, as you zoom in, you can kind of see the contour, not the contours, the vegetative cover of the site. There's a wooded area kind of central, and then beyond the easement area of the UE transmission lines to the south of it. And other than that, it's mostly brush hog ground cover. There's an ephemeral drainage way that begins on the site and runs towards the Ameren UE station, and that is shown in blue. Shows the contour elevations of the property. Starting from the south, it is high there, kind of dips down to a low point, rises again, and kind of undulates up towards the old Etherton Road and Highway 109 intersection. Here's kind of an isometric perspective, so you kind of see the buildings in relation to the subject site that are around it. Again, the easement of the transmission lines in Ameren UE is the most prominent. There's also another worship center to the west of the subject site, and then residential uses surrounding that. So this is located at the southern terminus. The very end of this area here is actually State Route 109 and Old Etherton. I'm sorry, this is a Babbler. Babbler is the city maintained, and 109 is state maintained. This is a confusing lot because it's like completely surrounded by different roads. Here you can see the perspective of the transmission tower that carries the lines across the easement area. 109 is off to the right, the subject site in central, and then Babbler Park Drive there to the left. And as you're traveling down Babbler Park Drive, you get to Old Etherton Road here. And as we're traveling north, you can see the subject property to the right of the screen, another worship center to the left of the screen, and I called it Smith School Road because Google Maps has this listed wrong. So, okay. Going north on Old Etherton, this is looking back, sort of, I would say, 2/3 of the way up the subject property, looking towards the transmission lines, and you can see just some a few trees scattered thereabout, but the main woodland area is to the south. And then this is at the northern extent of what should be labeled as Old Etherton Road and 109, looking south at the property. And the very tip of this is actually owned by someone else. But you can see the subject property right here. There is a gravel cut through that depicts the northern extent of the subject property. And that's 109 to the left of the screen. And this is traveling down 109 back south towards BA, again, just to give you another perspective, the lay of the land along with vegetative cover. Again, 109, looking towards the Ameren UE station, subject property to the right of the slide. And this is looking due west towards, so Ameren UE is behind me when this picture was taken, looking at the tree line, and then beyond that is the other worship center that lies to the west of the subject property. This is looking back north, up 109. Excuse me. This here shows the central location of the property where the improvements are planned. Again, you can see the grassy area. And if you go to the next slide, we have so you can see the building there in gray. The two arrows point to the locations of the building that sit in the 50-foot setback. This is proposed to be located at a 25-foot setback, both from 109 and Old Etherton Road. Here is an alternative that was supplied by the petitioner's representative. The first layout was done by the architect, and then the next one was actually done by an engineer. And this here shows a a variance request that is less than what was originally advertised for. And it would be a 25-foot setback in lieu of 50 feet, but just from the Etherton Road right-of-way, not from 109. And I'll defer to the director and the petitioner to elaborate on that a little bit more. As you can see from these two, this site has been redesigned ever so slightly. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'll get a drink of water and come back up. Thank you.
Thank you. Can the petitioner please come forward and state your name, address, and relation to the property, and then be sworn in by the court reporter?
Hi, my name is Mike Bisher. I am the representative civil engineer. My address is 14851 Remington Road in Marion, Illinois. Yeah, that was a 120-mile drive this evening just to see you guys, and I'm hoping to get autographs from each one of you. Yes.
Mr. Busher, can you please, is it Busher?
I was taught Bisher.
Bisher. Mr. Bisher, can you please explain the nature of the request and the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance as it relates to the character of the property?
Well, I got involved a little bit later than I was hoping for, so the architect and the owner submitted the first plan. Once I got to looking at it, I disagree with 109 altogether. They even show a proposed entrance off of 109. I'm suggesting that they don't even attempt to do that. So I was able to pull it off of 109 and maintain the required 50-foot setback. My main concern as a design engineer is the south portion of that property. And you can see the contours, it starts to slope off actually. The further south, the steeper it slopes. Can you build on it? Yes. Is it practical? From my standpoint, no. It's just not practical. The best spot is at the northern tip of this property. And so in order to get that building to fit, I believe we're going to need a variance off of Old Etherton Road. Now, I read the report from staff, and I got a little confused. It said that Etherton Road terminates before it intersects with State 109. Joe, can you confirm that for me? It's number 2, area and site characteristics. It says Old Etherton Road right-of-way terminates before it intersects Route 109. I don't believe it does.
That's an error on my part.
That's okay. I just want to make sure that I didn't miss something.
As you can see, there is an intersection with Route 109.
So the only property then we would affect would be the church to the west of us. We would maintain all the required setbacks off of 109. So I believe all we're asking for is a setback variance off of Old Etherton Road. What kind of questions can I answer?
Do any of the board members have any questions for Mr. Fisher?
Yeah, so you had mentioned that, well, did you consider shifting the whole thing a little bit further south?
Well, absolutely. And the further south we go, the less practical it is to build it. And so I'm trying to keep it as far north as possible. You're going to start getting into substantial retaining walls and, quite honestly, drainage issues, because we've got an existing blue line on the USGS map that we're going to start interfering with. So from my perspective, the south half of that property isn't buildable, which is our hardship. And obviously, you keep going further south, there's 250-foot easement for the main transmission line.
But to make it, I'm not saying you should or shouldn't or any of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand. To stay within the 50-foot setback, how much further south would you have to push the project?
What happens is you end up with 2 completely separate parking lots that are not cohesive for the whole use, if that makes any sense. How much further? I don't have a distance for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I was just trying to get a sense of, are you talking, if you just moved 50 more feet, you know what I mean? No, you're talking,
I'm talking,
have to go
it would,
a
it would be a little bit, yeah. The other issue I'm dealing with is the location and the rotation of the temple itself. And so, my first question was, well, let's just rotate the whole thing 90 degrees and we'll be done. Well, because I'm an idiot with most other religions, we have to have this facing east. And so that's my next design problem. Or challenge, I should say.
It states in here about you're concerned about the power lines. Is that?
I'm not concerned about the power lines. I just know I can't keep going further south.
Okay.
I don't believe the power lines are going to be in the way. I don't think
They won't, okay.
No.
And do you realize there's 13 letters against this variance?
Well, I understand that, but I think everything had to do with how close we were asking to get to 109.
Right.
I didn't see any of the letters, I'm sorry.
And basically, that's what they are.
Yeah, everybody's
They're
concerned with the
closest to
109. Yes, and so I feel like we've resolved that issue.
Okay.
And so we're not asking for that variance off of 109 at all.
Thanks.
Mhm.
so, it's a little hard for me to remember this, but where Old Etherton connects with 109 is a like ultra tight acute angle or whatever. And I do that, I drive through there a lot, every week for sure. And it's kind of hard to look back sometimes to see traffic off of 109. So I guess my question is, are we planning a bunch of, and I love trees, but are we planning stuff that's going to make that harder to actually look back, or do you think our sight line's going to be okay?
Does the city own that road?
I believe so.
You think we'll be okay with that?
Yes, we'll manage the site distance. Whatever, wherever the located at that level. We won't park 36.
And quite honestly, we don't own that corner anyway. I can't plant on it. We actually own even further south of the gravel road.
Oh.
Yeah, we can't plant that far anyway. It shouldn't be an issue.
I see, yeah, right. Yeah, you're right.
I'm obviously not an engineer or an architect, but is there any way to shrink the plans so that they remain in the setbacks or stay out of the setback? I mean, I understand you can't shift it because of
I can't
the religion.
rotate it. Yeah. Obviously, yes. I mean, we can put
how big is that? I can't. It's pretty small.
It looks like there's 3 sections there, 5,000.
It's like 14,000 square feet, I believe, that they're asking.
That looks about.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big building on a small
It's
space.
a big building, and it will attract a whole lot of additional families that are already planning to move to Wildwood, from what I was told. What's the possibility of the city just closing that intersection of Etherton and 109? It only serves those two churches, am I correct?
Without talking to our Director of Public Works and getting input from City Council, I wouldn't want to be on record saying there's a good chance or no chance. So it's certainly a intersection that would not be approved if it were to be built today, but it's often hard to remove roadways and terminate access, and certainly our city attorney knows that better than I.
I can simply concur with the director's assessment of that.
What is the reason for this indentation and then it sticks out here, rather than a flush, a flat?
I'm sorry, the architect that designed this is on vacation in Canada, which is why I'm standing here.
My question is, you'd still be out of the, you still wouldn't be compliant with variance But I imagine scaling that down, that's a good 10, 12 feet.
It could very well be, but at the same time, it's going to be an architectural interest in the buildings. You don't want a large building that's just flat either. Now, the other point I think I have is on the west side, that church, it's the parking lot first, and the church sits way back off to the west. So it's not like we're going to have two buildings right up on each other. Can you see it way back there?
Give me any idea what that square footage of that building.
I'm sorry, I sure don't. Yeah.
See it relative to how big that building would be. Looks a heck of a lot smaller than 4,000 square feet.
I agree.
Madam Chair, if you give me a second, I'll see if I
And so the concept of moving the buildings down and the parking up doesn't work. I mean, I know it is a really weird shaped parcel. I get that.
Sure.
You're also probably sensing us being a little squeamish about compromising on the setbacks.
Sure.
Because of precedents and all that other stuff. So is there any, have you thought about that, repositioning the buildings a little further south and changing the parking structure around a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. I've got about 17 different layouts.
Okay.
Which one works the best is, quite honestly, the one that we ask for, 50-foot setbacks on both streets. But I think what you're asking me is, can it be done? Yes. But is it practical? We don't believe so. And that's why we're asking for this variance. I don't know how else to explain it. I have a son that lives in Aspen, and they build, homes on the mountainsides. Can it be done? Yes. It costs $40 million to do so.
So the hardship would be the amount of money
No, ma'am.
extra it would take to move it a little further south?
Well, obviously,
Is that the hardship of the whole project?
not necessarily the whole project, but the buildable site is on the north side of the property. The middle of the property is a steep slope.
So where the parking is, where it says total parking, 100 spaces, is that all on a hill?
That's
going-
where the hill begins. Yes,
That's where
ma'am.
it begins.
Well, yeah. I mean, the parking is going to be pretty much flat as well, right? I mean, it'll probably have some paper on it for drainage and that kind of.
Sure.
Right. So I think what I'm hearing maybe you say is, if you're going to be developing that area as well, really you can't find a way to flip-flop that and.
I haven't yet.
Yeah, okay.
Chair, according to St. Louis County, the other appears to be about
Significantly smaller.
You can trace an area on Google Maps.
Do any other board members have any questions for the petitioner? Thank you, Mr. Bisher.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to open the floor to speakers in the audience who may want to speak in favor or in opposition to the request. Have you filled out a card? Okay, after you're finished. That's okay, right? She can fill out the card after she's finished. You can come on up. Can you please state your name for the record?
Betty Vanrod, I live on Smith School.
Okay.
So I live right there. And that little road is,
Could you be sworn in first by the court reporter?
there we go, yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
The road is dangerous to exit because there's a blind spot. It's that old Etherton is very popular. By 4 o'clock, it's kind of, and 8 o'clock, it's a lot of traffic right there. And I think you might have to think about how you're going to reconfigure the roads for their holidays, because you're going to have a lot of traffic right there. That's all.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers in the audience who want to speak in favor of or in opposition to the request? Hearing none at this time, I'll offer the opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report. Do we have any? Yes. Can you please come up? Sure. Can you please state your name and your address, your relation to the party, and be sworn in by the court reporter?
My name is Randy Green. My address is 10285 Bach Boulevard, St. Louis 63132. I was listening to his presentation from Mike, and what's going on here is, first of all, it's a very difficult piece of property because of the way it's shaped, you know, with the street, the road coming from a tip and widening out, then going down a hill, and then dealing with a big Ameren easement. So what the problem that we also need to have is a big hardship is we're going to have to figure out the sewers and water and stuff there, which the current church has a treatment plant there that you could see, the sewage treatment plant that they have to maintain. And that takes up a pretty considerable area, and getting further down the hill is going to be a problem. Plus, we're probably going to need some kind of retention, you know, for the paving, because we're going with the paved surface now. So I'm sure MSD has this area, don't they? MSD have jurisdiction here?
If MSD doesn't, we apply the same.
And with that being said, there'll be a considerable amount of space taken up further south to be able for us to even be able to put this project together. So my thought was to bring that up to you as a hardship also, because we have to try to keep that building up as far north as we can, because the further south we go, we're not going to get the room to be able to do our grading limits, stormwater management, and sanitary. Because right now there is no sewers that I found yet close that I know of.
Any questions for the speaker? Thank you.
Thanks.
If the two speakers could fill out cards in the back for senior planner, that would be great. Any other speakers in the audience who'd like to step forward? I'd like to offer the opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report if anybody has that request. Hearing none. Director Vunich, if you'd like to make any final comments.
Yes, ma'am, and thank you. Madam Chair and members of the board, the department recognizes that, at least from the engineer's perspective, he's traveled a great distance to participate in tonight's meeting, but the department would respectfully request a postponement before any action is taken. The rationale for the request is twofold. First, the revised plan was submitted late in the process, and although the department finds many positives about the revised plan, it thinks it's only fair that the site be re-advertised and the information regarding the revised plan be available to the public. Maybe those 13 comment letters will change based upon the revised plan and maybe make the process a little easier for all involved. Secondly, the department does believe that the revised plan addresses one of its major concerns that wasn't referenced in the report, and that's the access to Route 109. And so again, it just believes that there's a lot of positives, but the department cannot change its recommendation midstream and would like more time to review that plan before a decision is made by this board. The matter can be brought back at the meeting in September. I know it is a 30-day delay, but with any project, I think the goal of all parties, including the 5 board members, is to get it right the first time so that if it is constructed, it's what everybody wanted and it works well and is safe from the standpoint of its use. Madam Chair, I'll be available for any comments regarding the request for postponement to the September meeting at this time.
Thank you, Director Vunich. Same thing, make a motion to,
Request a motion from the members for postponement to the September 2019 meeting.
is there a motion from the board members to postpone this to the September 2019 meeting?
Can I want to ask one question though, before we do that,
Sure.
if that's okay.
Sure.
You know, how much precedence is there to grant variances for like setbacks like this for churches or businesses or whatever?
From the department's perspective, it's probably 75% of the variance requests we hear setback reductions. But I would defer to Ms. Giles, Ms. Coleman, and Mr. Morris. They've been on the board for years, and they can either affirm or...
Do you
Is
mean...
that fairly a common thing?
Do you mean, does this have any effect on other variance requests?
Well, I'm trying to understand, you know, if this is a fairly common thing that happens in the city, then there's not a whole lot of precedence that's being set if this were approved, right?
I'm going to let Mr. Young, the city attorney, answer that
Yeah.
as far as precedence goes.
As it relates to anything before the Board of Adjustment, every property is deemed unique and different. So in terms of a variance that you may grant on one particular piece of property, it's not going to be precedent setting for any next piece of property that may come forward requesting a similar variance because each property is deemed unique.
Does that answer your question?
I think so.
And again, as I say, other than sign size, it seems like setbacks are the primary item that the board hears from our residents, businesses, and others.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Do we have a motion to postpone the vote until the September 2019 meeting?
I'll make a motion we postpone it until September.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Board Member Morris, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Frank?
Yes.
Board Member Coleman?
Yes.
Board Member Sprunger?
Yes.
And I also vote yes to postpone this meeting to the September, or this request till the September 2019 meeting.
Thank you. Before we adjourn, there is another item that I would like to offer for consideration. With the departure of Vern Hudson, who was our chair, and that position being filled by acting chair Garrett, who's now moved on to the Board of Ethics, it would be appropriate if you all would like to consider either tonight or in September the election of the officers for the Board of Adjustment. Ms. Giles is the senior member. That is why we ask her to be acting chair. Certainly we could do an election tonight, or if you'd like to consider it, and then we could do it in September at the start of the meeting. But have Ms. Giles again be the acting chair for that purpose. Want to wait till September?
Do you guys want to wait till September or vote now?
Madam
Say
Chairman,
vote now.
if it's not on the agenda, I believe, and in light of that, I would recommend waiting until September.
We'll wait till September.
We'll wait till
but
September.
think about it. If you have a burning desire to be secretary or something, let us know. Or let us know. We'll make sure it's on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.